Hi, and good evening. My name is Kara Mallory, and I am a part of the Baylor University Women's Council of San Antonio. And let me be the first to welcome you to our very special fall event. We are so excited that you're a part of this virtual world and opportunity to connect no matter where you are this evening. We are thrilled to introduce two very special guests tonight. We cannot wait to share Holly and Kendal Volz's story with you. We'll do that in just a moment. But before, I just wanted to share with you, in case you weren't familiar with what the Baylor Women's Council is and what we do, I wanted to extend that opportunity to you if you might want to join and become a part of it. The Baylor Women's Council, there's lots of groups all over the United States, but we come together as women who support the Baylor mission and vision. It may be alumni, it may be proud parents of Baylor students, or just those who support Baylor University. But we come together not only to enjoy events together and friendship and fellowship, but primarily to help do scholarships and show our support to Baylor University students. I think now more than ever, these students need to know that we are here for them and we support the work that they're doing at Baylor University. So just know that should you choose to join the Baylor Women's Council of San Antonio, that your membership comes together with the membership of others, and we can make a big impact in the lives of students at Baylor. So right now, what I'd like to do is go ahead and hand it over to my good friend Jill and fellow board member as she introduces Holly and Kendal Volz to you. Thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you, Kara. My name is Jill Petrie, and I'm with the Baylor Women's Council in San Antonio, and we're so pleased and so privileged to have Holly and Kendal Volz today sharing their story during this time of season of gratefulness and thankfulness. So with that, hi, y'all. How are you doing?
Hey.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So glad you're here. So how about we start off with y'all talking about your connection to Baylor, how you met, what you're doing now.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Jill and Kara, and thank you, Baylor University and the Baylor Women's Council for letting us share our story.
Mm-hmm.
We're really excited to do that. Holly and I both grew up here in San Antonio. She is a Ronald Reagan High School graduate, and myself, I'm a Smithson Valley High School graduate. We started dating in high school, actually, after a mutual friend introduced us. I was traveling home from a baseball tournament in Florida, and back when flip phones were cool, saw a picture of Holly and just knew that I needed to be introduced to this beautiful girl and get to know her. And so we both decided to attend Baylor University over some other in-state and out-of-state options. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to play baseball in college. And after being recruited by Mitch Thompson and Steve Smith and Coach John again, and having them share really all that Baylor had to offer, I mean, quite frankly, the choice was clear. And so now, over a decade removed from being in class on campus, I think both of us can proudly say that we wouldn't change a thing about our decision.
I also can't believe that it's been a decade since we left Baylor too. That makes me feel kind of old, but so Kendal got his finance degree from the business school. I got my BA in biology. I was pre-med. I can't say enough good things about how Baylor prepared me for being a physician. I'm a dermatologist now. I practice in Bernie. I love it. It's so much fun. And Kendal works for Frost Bank. He does commercial lending. So we're very happy with how Baylor prepared us for the real world.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great. I love to hear these long-term stories. And then, of course, how we're all just seem to be, when we reflect back on our times at Baylor, how fantastic it was. And I know y'all have a great story there of Baylor. So again, we're talking about demonstrating gratefulness and thankfulness in our lives, and y'all have quite a unique story. And through a medical diagnosis of your son, Whit, you have been on quite a journey. One, understanding what it was, but then also just you continue to demonstrate that your faith, your walk with God, and of course your gratefulness. So share with us your story so that we can learn from it.
Yes. So I think our story really begins long before Whit. Kendall and I both accepted Jesus when we were kids. We're very fortunate that we were raised with parents that love the Lord, and I think that played a huge role for us. And we've been together for so long. We've been together now for over half of our lives, and really the first 5 years of us being together overflowed with abundance. We had incredible friends, many successes athletically, academically, socially. That, to be totally frank, I think I started to kind of fall into the lie that I could work hard and control my destiny and life was going to be good. And if we prayed and we were good, kind people, that, life was going to be the way we wanted it to look. And in our 20s, the Lord really so graciously began to deconstruct that lie for us. So soon after we got married, I had started medical school in San Antonio, and Kendall was off starting his professional baseball career out of state. And so not only were we dealing with the challenges of a long distance marriage, but I was also walking through a very dark season of anxiety and depression, coupled with a breast cancer diagnosis for my mother. So this was really chapter 1, if you will, of our season of refinement and purification, as I like to call it. So fast forward a few years, Kendall and I decide we want to have another baby, or have a baby, and we find ourselves on the very lonely and emotionally draining roller coaster ride of infertility. And that season for me, I know it was challenging for you, but for me, it was just absolutely devastating. To say it broke me was an understatement. And
and it was new, and we didn't know anybody that had gone through that either.
Yeah.
So we really felt alone.
Yes. But in the bottom of that pit of isolation, I began to know Jesus in a way that I never had known him before. And I began to seek him for the sole purpose of being with him, and not because I was asking for him to give me good things. And I learned very slowly and somewhat reluctantly that I'm not in control. And out of that darkness came such sweet freedom and our first little girl, Blair.
Yeah. So not long after Blair turned 1, we found out that we were expecting baby number 2, our son Whit, who's now 2.5 and is fantastic and all over the place. But no, after painfully walking nearly 2 years of infertility and IVF with Blair, we couldn't really believe that, the positive pregnancy test.
Yeah.
We really couldn't.
Big surprise.
Yeah. In fact, another baby was something that we really weren't ready for at the time. And just as we learned though with Blair, through our season of infertility, God gives us babies according to his timing and not ours. Mm-hmm. And so we knew Whit's timing was perfect.
Yep. And so about halfway into this pregnancy, my incredible doctors started to notice that something wasn't quite right. So Whit's heart rate, his resting heart rate when I would go in for the checkups, was very low. And so after we had reached, I guess, like the point of viability, they called it, I had a checkup and his heart rate was like around 100. And my doctor was like, this is not right. I need to send you guys to the hospital. I don't know what's going on, but we just need to observe Whit and see if he's healthy or if he needs to come out, what's next. And so I was terribly frightened. We went to the hospital. Thankfully, we were only there for the weekend, and he looked okay enough to where they discharged us. But subsequent to that, I was going to the high-risk pregnancy doctor 3 times a week. I was on a monitor for hours every time I would go. And even then, we had yet another scare. I was like 32 weeks pregnant. I got admitted to the hospital again. They gave me a steroid shot. They were like, something is not right. This baby is not thriving. He needs to come out. And we were very prayerful that God would just give Whit more time to grow, that God would heal Whit. And somehow, his little heart perked up enough to where they let him keep growing. And we were able to be discharged again after about a week and a half in the hospital. And we made it to May of 2018. They decided to induce me a few weeks early. So we went to the hospital and my labor was progressing quickly. And before we knew it, Whit was ready to come, and my doctor comes in and was at bedside. And really all of a sudden, by God's grace, the doctor was there because things just started to take a turn for the worse. And really his heart rate just dropped, and then they couldn't find a heartbeat at all. And my doctor said, Holly, we've got to move now. We're going to do an emergency C-section. And that was just such a crazy moment. I felt like time was standing still, but I remember Kendal and I really felt so at peace in that moment too. And it's funny, like I immediately, like you never know what you're going to do in those moments of like sheer, oh my gosh, this could not go well. And I just, all I did was close my eyes and I was just saying Jesus's name. We were hauling down the hallway, running back to the OR, and I just was praying, Jesus, 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 because that's all that I knew I could do. And we make it back to the OR and I'm on the table and I just started singing that Matt Mayer song, Lord, I Need You. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it because I really did. And in like those moments, I just reached for what I knew I could cling to. But we just had such peace, like in that moment, even though I was really like, I knew that things could not turn out well. I mean, I knew because of my medical background, hearing all the things that the doctors were saying, that I might not walk out of this hospital with a baby. But, a few minutes later, it was out and they were able to resuscitate him and he was okay. And we really believe that God spared his life that day with how badly it could have turned out. The fact that he is alive is nothing short of a miracle in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we're there in the operating room, and Holly's there and we're praying and she's singing, and we just had this peace, that was just it was overwhelming.
It was like in the Bible when it talks about that peace that surpasses all understanding. It was that. I mean, it really brings tears to my eyes because I think there are a lot of people who walk through life and maybe they can't say that they've experienced that. And as scary as it was, I think we're very grateful to have lived that because we can say that we know that that's real. Like that's a real promise that God saw us through on.
Oh, and he was showing us his presence throughout the whole thing. I mean, I looked up and the surgical tech has a hat on that has every name for Christ in the Bible.
Yeah, his little scrub cap said like Jesus boldly across the front. And
for whatever reason, I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of that in the middle of the craziness.
I wonder if we can do that. Like, but he did. We have a picture. It's kind of a cool little, I guess, token that we got to take from that. And then I remember when we were when they had taken Whit off to the NICU, and I guess they were, finishing up with me, and like everyone in the OR was like, oh my goodness, like I was praying that entire delivery. And so to just feel like so loved and taken care of by the, when the people around you were praying for you and your child is really pretty cool. But I think here's like really one of the sweetest parts of the story of Whit's actual birth is Kendal and I go back to recovery. And
we had brought a speaker because in our mind we had this picturesque, okay, we're baby number 2, here it comes, we're going to be playing worship music, it's going to be fantastic. And that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah, of course it was not quite so beautiful as we thought. But, so we said, let's pray. And Kendal turned the speaker on and we put on a Pandora like worship station. And what do you know is the first song that comes on? It is that Matt Mayer song, Lord, I Need You. And I cannot tell you like how much affirmation and like peace that gave us. God was speaking to us and saying, I heard your prayer and I answered it. And it was just, I think we just looked at each other and we just like wept. It was one of those moments that like we'll never forget. And I thank God and his kindness because he knew what was ahead, right? Like he knew that we were not out of the woods yet and that there was more to come and more of a burden that we were going to have to kind of bear in this trial. But just like his kindness of holding our hands through it and just like, touching us and saying like, I'm with you, trust me. It was just nothing short of God's character. That is who he is. He is so kind to love us in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, because of how traumatic his birth was, Whit was in the NICU and they had him hooked up to all the monitors for several days. And we were thinking, he looks pretty good. We're going to get to go home soon. And then the nurses started to notice that his heart was still doing something funky. They were like, something's not right. And so one thing led to another, and they ordered an EKG and they consulted cardiology to come take a look at him. And I think another blessing and proof of God's providence is that the cardiologist who happened to be on call was a specialist called an electrophysiologist. And so he's done not only fellowship, but an additional training in specifically how the electricity in the heart works, essentially, is the best way I can explain it. So
there's only 150 pediatric electrophysiologists in the country, and he was the one that was on call reading Whit's EKG.
So he sees Whit's EKG and he looks at it and he catches an often overlooked abnormality. He had something called a prolonged QT interval. And so, he shared that with us, and one thing led to another, and we ended up getting genetic testing because there was concern that this could be due to a congenital or genetic syndrome called long QT syndrome, which we had no family history of.
Right.
Kendall and I have been perfectly healthy our whole lives as far as we knew. And so in that waiting of, gosh, like, could our baby have a genetic problem? And, we were reading all about it and learning, like, what is long QT syndrome? And essentially it's an electrical rhythm abnormality of the heart where it doesn't beat like it should. So when you're exercising in particular, anytime you're excited or your heart rate is up, you can just go into sudden cardiac arrest for no reason. So it's one of the top causes for young, healthy people to just die suddenly. And so we're in the hospital and we're reading and we're learning that, like, this could be our story and we're going to have to put our child on a medication. And I remember before we left the hospital, we had to do CPR training and we had to buy an AED, a defibrillator that we were carrying in our diaper bag. And you're just sitting there thinking, how can this be real? Like, I remember doing the CPR training, which I'd done many times in my medical training, but I was just crying the entire time because now I was doing it to be able to be prepared to do it on my infant son. And, in that wait, because of course we did get confirmation that Whit does indeed have congenital long QT syndrome, but, we were praying fervently that God would work a mighty miracle. And we prayed that God would rewire the circuitry of Whit's heart and that he would be healed and that it would be this great story of things being scary and things looking bad. And then God puts his hand on him and he heals Whit and we're done. And then it goes back to this happy ending where, we're all healthy and everything's great. And, unfortunately that wasn't, the answer that we got, or I don't really mean unfortunately, but you know what I mean? It was the answer to that prayer looked different than I had hoped it would. And instead of healing, we actually found out through cascade genetic testing that I have long QT syndrome. So does our daughter. And then 4 other family members as well. Like we would just, continue to test. So through Whit, we found out that many people in our family are affected by this. And so it was a lot. This was a very heavy time for us, very heavy news, and just a difficult pill to swallow, to say the least.
So many people would walk through this and not demonstrate the faithfulness or this leaning on God in a time like this. How were you able to turn to your faith and show an acceptance and a reception of God's, mercy with you? How were y'all able to do that?
So part of why I shared, the story of all of the struggles and trials leading up to Whit's birth and his diagnosis is because I think that it was out of God's kindness that he prepared us for that. As I mentioned, one of the first really difficult struggles that the Lord asked Kendal and I to walk through was our season of infertility. And we prayed and prayed for nearly 2 years before God answered our prayers for a child. And looking back, I can see how the Lord was so very kind to lead us through those challenging years before blessing us with children, because that season of waiting refined us and truly brought me to my knees in submission to God's will for my family. It was one of those gut-wrenching, heart aching, life-sucking, quite frankly, trials where you just are utterly and completely helpless. And
we always say, we're so glad that we've gone through it, but we would never want to do it again.
No, I mean, I remember there were days where I literally couldn't even muster up a single word to pray. I had nothing to say. So I would just get my Bible open and I would just read. I read the Psalms a lot because I didn't have the strength within me to pray. And yet in that season too, I also remember some days where I felt so close and so much closeness and so much intimacy to the Lord. And when I look back on that, I can now say that during all of that, God was teaching me. He was training me, and you too, and preparing me to be the mama that I would need to be one day for my special heart babies. And in fact, I have a few notes here, and if you guys don't mind, I would like to just read a few words that I wrote years ago during that season of waiting that really capture the lesson that God was teaching me in that time, and like the question I was wrestling with. And I think it answers your question on how we've been able to kind of persevere and move forward. So here's what I wrote. In all honesty, I can't even begin to count the number of times I've cried out to God, shaken my fists, and questioned him out of anger and desperation. I've begged for a sign. I've searched high and low for some sort of confirmation that this suffering will be worth it, and that one day a sweet little baby will call me mama. How is it possible to fully believe that our God not only can, but will fulfill our prayers, while all the while knowing that he may not, if it is not his will for us? How do we believe with an unshakable faith, yet not end up disappointed if he has something different for us? How can I posture my heart in such a way that acknowledges his infinite power and ability, yet surrenders to his authority, resting in his sovereignty and dominion over my life? This is my battle. This is my struggle. Maybe it is yours too. I can't help but smile when I read that now, because I can see how our suffering did have purpose. Just as it says in Malachi chapter 3, our Abba Father will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. We were being purified, we were being refined, we were being readied for the life that God was calling us to. So in that absence of the physical healing that we were praying for Whit and the rest of us too, the Lord has been so faithful to answer our prayer that Whit's life would bring glory to God, and that his story would grow his kingdom. The Lord has responded instead with spiritual and emotional healing for us through, or though we still have our hard days, we have found freedom from the day-to-day temptations of fear and worry and control. And the Lord instead has responded with opportunities for us to share our story of God's faithfulness. I think Kendal and I now more boldly proclaim the goodness of God. I've had lots of opportunities to share the story of Whit's birth with my patients and acquaintances that I've met through life. The Lord has responded with opportunity for us to comfort others just as he has comforted us. And the Lord has responded with the revelation that we need him, and we need him desperately. We know that we are not self-sufficient and that we need Jesus. I remember a conversation that I had with you when Whit was still in the NICU, And I told Kendall, I said, I'm really struggling to understand why God has allowed this to happen. And Kendall looked at me just clear as day and with the utmost faith. And he said, you know, Holly, God may never reveal the why to us, but I know that he's telling us that we can. And it was just such this like providential, like peace giving statement. That you're right. Like God wouldn't call us or ask us to walk through something that he hasn't absolutely equipped us to walk through, and all those gentle reminders and his, you know, ever present help, like when we really needed help, you know, reminds us how kind God is. And that's what keeps us going, because we know that we are not alone. And we know that life is more than just us being happy and things looking the way that we want it to. It's, if there's one thing that we've learned in this chapter of God's story for our lives, it's that God will meet us in those dark, hopeless moments. He'll hear our prayers and he'll be faithful to answer them, although we must humbly trust how he responds, because he hears us, but he also knows just what our hearts need. We need Jesus, and he's in the details, and he's given us a lifetime of opportunity to trust him even more. And I think that, you know, Whit is an example of that. So it's just a way for us to just keep trusting Jesus, that he's going to be faithful to protect our little babies every day. So we're very grateful for that.
Yeah. So thinking back at your days at Baylor, was there someone you look back on that might have shaped your perspective or shaped your look towards faith and gratitude that you've been able to carry through your post-Baylor life? Do you have any thoughts or stories around that?
Yeah, I mean, so looking back, you know, for me, I think the Baylor athletic program and faculty did a great job of teaching us to keep perspective, you know, faith first, followed by family, academics, and then sport. But really that foundation of keeping God first and knowing he's always good through both times of celebration and suffering has certainly helped shape my outlook on life and really our outlook on life. And it's really been a pillar to reflect on during life when times aren't easy. And also, I think the friendships that we made during our time at Baylor are very important, and they're very dear to us.
I was going to say, for me, it was definitely the community that I had around me. I mean, I had professors that would have us over, like classes over to their houses and cook dinner for us. I had incredible roommates and friends around me that were just encouraging me in my walk. I mean, I remember our first day at Baylor, we went to chapel and we were like singing, I forget, was it, who was it? It was that Christian band.
It's David Crowder.
Yeah, Dave Crowder. Yes. Yeah. David Crowder played like in chapel our first day.
Did we go to college or we go to a concert? Like, this is awesome.
Oh, and coming from public school, I was like, people are singing about Jesus at school. This is so awesome. So it's just nice to, when you're in such, you know, that phase of life where you're learning and you're growing and you're trying to figure out who you are, to be encouraged so much by the people around you that are teaching you, the people around you that are walking through education with you. It's
you're forming a sense of community and a community.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, God didn't intend for us to walk through life alone.
Right.
You know, I mean, and or in isolation. And so, you know, those pillars and relationships have allowed us to keep a healthy perspective, you know, and a heart of gratitude, even when life isn't easy, you know. So like the book of James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, you know, not if, but when
you face trials.
Yeah. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, our sincere gratitude has come through our perspective, which was learned through our suffering.
Yes.
We love listening to Matt Chandler, and in a recent sermon he discusses the importance to be joyfully confident in Jesus. And I think that's fantastic. And that's really what we've learned to hold on to.
Yes. We heard that and we loved it. We were like, joyful confidence in Jesus. Amen. I mean, especially with everything going on right now, it's like you can't be confident in anything besides Jesus, really. So we're glad that God has taught us that.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, we're living in the weirdest of times, right? And we're getting ready for Thanksgiving, which has tradition wrapped all around it and what we usually do. And there's the thankfulness and going around the table and saying what you're grateful for. And then we're coming to Christmas. So what does gratefulness look like in the Volz family around these holidays? And then also, what could you share with those of us listening on how we could reflect a spirit of gratitude, even in these weird, strange times?
So I laugh because Kendall and I both read this question. We were kind of going through them together and thinking about how we wanted to answer. And we look at each other and we both like immediately right off the bat want to answer. I'm like, let me go first. No, me go first. And Kendall goes, I think that gratefulness this season is just all about staying present. And my like jaw dropped because I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Just staying present, soaking in each little moment, embracing the day-to-day, even if it's monotonous, just not like hitting cruise control just to try to get through the day. I think 2020 has had so many opportunities for distractions and like things that we can get caught up in and wonder if, well, what if this happens, or what if this happens, and how's life going to be? And if it's shown us anything, it's that we just need to enjoy today. And how many times in the Bible does the Lord tell us that, right? Like he tells us, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself, and I'm going to take care of you. So, I guess that's our answer, is our gratefulness will come from just staying present, but also reflecting on the little ways that God has been faithful. I remember sitting at this very table that we're sitting at right now, years ago when we were really struggling to find joy, and we would go back and forth and we would say one thing that we were grateful for. And I mean, man, it was like a stretch for me sometimes. I remember being like, I'm grateful for air conditioning. I'm grateful that there's food in my fridge. But the more that you practice that and the more that you reflect on, yes, Thanksgiving may not look like the way that we want it to look this year, but what do we have? How has God richly blessed us? In what ways has the craziness and the uncertainty of this year given us life, right? Like we're reprioritizing, we're recentering on what really matters. We have more time for reflection, more time together. So,
and to realize that, the blessings we have come in abundance.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So now we've come to the rapid fire part of the session. Thank y'all for sharing your story, but we have a couple of questions that we just want to hear Holly and Kendall's thoughts. So first and foremost, have you taught your children how to do sick and bears?
So Blair is 4.5 now, and she is infatuated with our golden retriever, Oakley, Annie Oakley. Okay. And so ever since Blair was little, she's chased Oakley around. Well, in college, one of my roommates had a yellow lab, and we decided, what are we going to do? Study? No, we're going to teach our dog some fun tricks. So we would put a treat on Omaha. Omaha was the lab's name, on her nose, and she would hold it, and we would all get around and say, "Ah, sick and bears," and she would toss it up and eat it. And so we taught it to Oakley. And so of course my daughter thought that was fantastic. So that's really how she learned how to do the sick and bears, was just giving her dogs treats.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And so Kendall, any baseball season predictions for the Baylor Bears this year? Do you dare go there? What do you think?
Oh, I think the team's gonna do well. I mean, I think Coach Rod, Coach Taylor, Coach Strauss have done a really remarkable job. Really putting out a great team. I hope that there's a season. I think that the coaching staffs for all of our teams are really doing a good job during such a strange and bizarre year, or second year of COVID, and having to navigate through the challenges there. But if they play, I know that they're going to be prepared and play well.
Great. Let's hope there's a season, right? Now, whenever y'all get back to Waco, which I'm assuming you do from time to time, Is there a favorite thing you like to do, a favorite place to eat? What do y'all do when you get to Waco?
I of course have to go to Common Grounds. I have to share this. When we went to college, Kendall did not drink coffee. He was like, ew, gross, I don't like coffee. Well, of course, I loved Common Grounds from day one. I lived in Collins. It was right across the street. And so when we would study, we'd go to Common Grounds and I'd get a coffee. And so he'd started taking like little sips of mine, and lo and behold, coffee is now his like favorite drink in the entire world, which really is thanks to Common Grounds and thanks to me for introducing it to your life. So that's a no-brainer. We love to go there.
Yeah.
And then George, we like to go to George's.
We love George's, of course. That's a staple. And we do have quite a few friends that still live in Waco.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've enjoyed a different aspect of going to their homes and visiting with their families. Yeah. And as they've continued to grow, we love that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much for sharing your story. I have the privilege of working with you, Kendal, and have heard some of these stories before. And what a gift y'all are to Baylor. And thank you for this ministry that really you have. And being a mom and dad to two sweet little kids. So anything else y'all like to share with the Baylor family as they're watching here?
No, just thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's really fun for us to get to do this.
Okay.
Sick and
Okay. Sick and bears. That's right. Okay. Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Wow. What an incredible story. I am so thankful that each of you were able to join us tonight. A special thanks goes out to Holly and Kendal for sharing your story with us. As officers, we were planning and hoping for a special event that would help all of us just really focus on gratitude and our faith this holiday season. And I hope that you enjoyed hearing their story and learning from their experience and their example of faith as much as I have tonight. Thank you again for being here this evening, and we hope to see you at some future events. Have a great night. Thank you.